Hey scholars, so this is our last lesson of new things for our Unit 4 on percents. So today we are doing simple interest, which is a way you can make money without doing anything at all. And I apologize if Bender jumps into the frame because he's right next to me trying to play with his toy. So our objective today is that I can solve simple interest problems. So for our review, we have Miss Marnon and Jake's Valentine's date receipt from Applebee's is shown below. So you can see we got the boneless wings, I got the 8-ounce top sirloin, and then Jake got a classic bacon cheeseburger. So add these all up, get the subtotal, then calculate the discount, the tip, and the tax, and then see if you can figure out how much we paid all together. So pause the video and see what you can do on your own now. Okay, so if you added all of these up together and you got the subtotal, I got that it was $39.77. For the discount, you have to do 15% of the subtotal, and I got $5.97. Sometimes when I do discount, I also like to put the negative in front to kind of help keep it straight that that is what's going to be taken away. So from just this, the total would be $33.80. So now here's the important part. We have to do our tip and our tax. So what is polite in society is that you tip on your original subtotal. So you're going to tip on this amount. So you want 20% of this. This is the dollar amount that your server did of work, right? They didn't give you the coupon. It was the company that gave you the coupon. So you tip servers off of your original subtotal. There is a law, though, that says that your sales tax has to be on the discounted price. So they can't give you sales tax based on this subtotal. So if you need to, you can pause this video and double check that you did the tip and the tax on those correct numbers and try those out. So if you did the tip on this $39.77, I got it that it was $7.95. And then the 8% tax on the $33.80, I got $2.70. And then when I added up from this total, I added my tip and my tax, and that is Bender crying. You okay, bud? When I added those all up, I got $44.45. So that is our total bill, and we just did a lot of different percent calculations for that. For our preview question, why do people put money in savings account? So this one you can come up with your own answer. So pause the video and write what you think people do with money in savings accounts. If you needed some ideas, some people like to save up for something big, like maybe a house, a car, a wedding, a video game. So people put money in savings account. What we're going to talk about today is sometimes people put money in savings accounts to earn interest. So let's go to our notes and start filling in some vocabulary on interest. So interest is just money that you're going to get from putting money in a bank. Sometimes it's also bad to have interest. Sometimes, like if you have credit card bills, do you ever hear like, oh, we charge 10% interest? That means like when you don't pay it, they charge you 10% of what you spent added on to your bill. And we're going to see a question like that in our practice. So interest is just money earned by leaving deposits. So deposits are when you put money in a bank. So deposits in a bank or other financial institution. That's a really messy word for deposits. So it's just when you put money in a bank, that's a deposit. You're putting money in, it's positive, and then it's going to earn some extra money onto it. What we call the principal is the starting amount of money. And it's not principal white, it's principal like money. So it's the starting amount of money invested or borrowed. Oh, my pen's being a little silly. So it's invested or borrowed. So if you had a credit card, that would be like money that you borrowed. If you signed a mortgage and bought a house, the principal is the amount that you paid for the house, but then you earn interest on it. And I'm still getting used to this new tablet. The balance is just the total amount of money in an account. So if you ever hear people talking about balancing a checkbook, they're talking about figuring out how much money total you have after all the money you spent or earned or put in your bank account, took out of your bank account. The total amount in an account is called your balance. So we have a simple interest equation that we're going to be using, and we can break it back down into quantity equals percent times whole, but sometimes it's just easier when we can think about it this way. So we call it I equals PRT. And we can talk about how this relates to quantity equals percent times whole in just a moment here. So I'll write it below it. But the I stands for interest. So you could say it's interest equals the principal, so the starting amount of money. And it's going to be times the rate times the amount of time. So when we're talking about interest, we can talk about it after months, after years. So we're going to have a rate that's usually a yearly rate. So if they do tell us a time that's in months, we need to make sure to figure out what part of the year that number of months is. So like if they said 6 months and the rate is annually, so for each year, we have to make sure that this time is half. It's half a year. But if we want to talk about how this relates to quantity equals percent times whole, your interest would be the quantity amount. Your principal is like the whole. And then the rate and the time is like the percent. It kind of goes together because we need the rate over that specific time. And we know with commutative property, we can switch the order that we multiply in. So it's okay if the principal is first in this equation, but the whole is last in this equation. But we can always go back to quantity equals percent times whole anytime you are unsure of a specific problem. But let's try a couple examples. So we have Annalise invests $100 in a savings plan. The plan pays 4.5% interest each year on her $100 account balance. How much money will Annalise earn in interest after 3 years? So why don't you pause this video, see if you can use I equals PRT and solve this on your own. Okay, so you should have tried this on your own. We're just figuring out how much she earned in interest, so we don't need the total balance. So we're going to find the interest, and it's going to equal the principal. The starting amount of money is 100 times the rate is 4.5%. So you can either write it as 4.5%. If you're using Desmos, this as a decimal is 0.045. But we can usually use the yellow calculators and just hit the percent key. Times 3 years. So this is the setup you should have had, but maybe instead of 4.5%, you needed to change it to a decimal, so you could type it in Desmos. That would be 0.045. When you multiplied this all out, the interest Annalise would get is $13.50. But you might be thinking, well, that's not a whole lot. But she didn't do anything other than just let the money sit in a bank account. So she got that money for free for just leaving it in the bank account. Part B wants to know what her balance will be after 5 years. So it's important that we know that this one just wanted the interest. This one wants the balance, which is going to be the total amount in the account at the end. So let's first set up and find what the interest is using I equals PRT. So why don't you pause the video and see if you can figure out what her interest would be after 5 years. So we're going to have a similar setup from before. So it's going to be 100, that's the principal, times the rate. It's still 4.5%. I'll write it as the decimal this time just so you can see it written both ways. Times the time, this time instead of 3 years, we're doing 5 years. So hopefully you got that set up. And when you multiplied that all out, I got 22.5 or $22.50. But that's the interest amount. We want the total balance. So the balance is everything in the bank account. So that's how much she started with plus how much she just earned. If we had 100 that she started with plus the $22.50 she earned in interest, she now has $122.50 for just putting her money in the bank and letting it sit there for 5 years. Let's look at another example. So this one's about a savings bond. Sometimes when people are born, like their grandparents or like a godparent will buy them a savings bond that you can cash in when you're older, and it earns some interest as well. So $1,000 savings bond earns simple interest at a rate of 3% each year. The interest is paid at the end of every month. So even though it's 3% for the whole year, they'll give you some each month. So it wants to know how much interest will the bond have after 3 months. So what's important is what I said before, is if we have our rate is in years and this is in months, we got a problem. So we actually need to figure out how much of a year 3 months is. So if you think about it, it's 3 months out of 12 months in a year. If you simplify that, it's 1/4. So 3 months is 1/4 of a year. So knowing that, you should be able to set this up using I equals PRT on your own. So pause the video and try that now. My pen was being a little silly, but hopefully you just figured out what the interest is after 3 months. So our principal is going to be the $1,000 savings bond times our rate is 3%. If you're not using a calculator with a percent key, you're going to need to change it to a decimal, which is 0.03. Times our time, we're using the 1/4 of a year, not the 3 months, because this rate is for the year. When you multiply this all out, the interest is $7.50. So again, that's not that much, but it's only after 3 months. So they only let it sit for 3 months and they got $7.50 for it. And they did just want to know the interest, not the total balance for this question. Let's look at one more together. And I'll switch up my color back to blue. A Don deposits $70 into a new savings account. The account earns 4.5% simple interest per year. What is the total amount of money in his savings account at the end of 3 years? So why don't you pause this video, try to set this I equals PRT up, figure out what his interest is, and then figure out what his total amount of money is. Okay, so hopefully you set this up. You found out his interest by doing the principal, which is $70, times the rate, 4.5%. which is 0.045 as a decimal, if you needed to know, times the 3 years. When I multiplied all of that out, I got the interest to be $9.45. So that's the interest, but the question says, what is the total amount of money? So that means we need to start with his principal, the starting balance in his account, and then add on the interest that he earned. So when you add 70 plus the 945, total Adon has $79.45. So those are just 3 exercises on finding the interest and then the total balance in an account. So these are going to be some careful reading to figure out if they want just the interest, if they want the total amount in the account, if they're giving us months or years. So those are the things to look for. This first example, instead of earning interest, this is Miss Reno is getting interest that she's going to owe to Old Navy for buying a $40 jean jacket and not paying off her credit card bill right away. So see how much interest she has to pay on this jean jacket for 1 month and 6 months. Then you got me opening a savings account, and then we have a challenge problem here where you have to compare Jenny and Mufa's answers or their interest they're earning. So who has the better account? Why? How much more did they actually make? So when you do these, you only need to pick 2. If this was easy, try that challenge question out. When you're done with those practice, you have Nevaeh's parents giving her $500. So this is our exit ticket. See how much interest she's going to earn by leaving that in a bank account. When you're all done, you can go into Delta Math and complete practice number 7.